Now, the challenge with that is the sort of the transitive risk, as it were. How do we know if, even if we can trust the people we're working with, who are they trusting? What's that sort of fourth and fifth level blast radius, if you will?
Welcome to CISO Unscripted. Cybersecurity, especially recently, is an industry that seems to have no shortage of opinions. This is not that. Here we talk about what we're actually seeing inside real investigations, what's working for attackers, and what security leaders need to rethink now. I'm Mitch Mayne from Unit 42. Thanks for being here. So if you read one thing in the cybersecurity world right now, read the 2026 Unit 42 IR report. It shows how attackers are hitting identity first, spreading across multiple services, and operating at machine speed. All of this has huge implications for how we defend. And who better to pressure test what's really in the data than our very own Chris George. Chris is Managing Director of Global Customer Support here at Unit 42. Chris, thanks for being with us today.
Hey, Mitch, thanks for having me.
All right, so we're just going to dive right into this thing. And my first question is around identity, particularly identity as the new perimeter. So we've spent like 2 decades talking about how defending the perimeter is the important thing, but the data suggests that attackers aren't really hacking in anymore. They're logging in. So is identity basically the new frontline now? And if so, structurally, what changed in enterprise environments to make that shift happen?
So I think this is a question that I kind of get into a little bit with our customers. And I think for me, identity is absolutely the front line. As we've moved away from the sort of traditional data center, the connectivity in through VPNs and through virtual desktops, that kind of thing, and everything's gone into the cloud. The only thing that's really stayed consistent is identity. And so it's absolutely the only thing that we have left at our disposal in some respects to kind of make sure that who's doing what in our environment. And I think that really is the shift, moving into software as a service, cloud environments. You can't put firewalls around that. It just doesn't work. You can't have a VPN where it's like once you run the VPN, everyone's good. You've got to make sure that whoever's doing whatever they're doing is the right person, but also what they're doing is correct and accurate for them. So it's a really interesting time. And actually, when you see from a stats perspective, from our side of things, when we get in and we do our incident responses, we do 750 cases a year. So we see a lot. And out of, I think, about 90% of the cases that we work on, identity is some aspect of the case. I think it's around 65% of the initial access that we see from the bad guys, all identity focused. That could be social engineering, it could be brute force, it could be previous credentials that they found on the dark web, but it's absolutely the first path in. We find that it's easier for the bad guys to log in, as you say, rather than hack in, because it just takes less time. They don't have to spend so much money and resource building up the exploits that they normally would use. They can just figure out what a password and username combination is. They can find it on the dark web. They're good to go. So we're really finding that you've got to be able to work across it all.
Wow. And 90% is a pretty startling statistic. That's not a small number. I want to talk about supply chain for a moment here. So if we think of identity as the new perimeter, SaaS seems like it might be the new attack highway. So when companies stitch together hundreds of integrations and plugins and vendor tools, are they basically inheriting other people's risk without realizing it?
Exactly that, Mitch. As I mentioned, as everyone's kind of rushed out to the cloud, it's absolutely the new supply chain. It used to be a case of you'd bring in a new supplier, you'd maybe give them some access into your environment, or you'd download or you'd install some software. But now everything is software, and we're connecting to not just one system, but all of the integrations that system is using to pull the data from various points, give us the user experience that we crave. Now, the challenge with that is the sort of the transitive risk, as it were. How do we know even if we can trust the people we're working with, who are they trusting? What's that sort of fourth and fifth level blast radius, if you will? Because, we've seen it in recent cases, certainly in the UK, where, very small suppliers to engineering organizations have had a real problem And if they were to be removed from that sort of ecosystem, that supply chain, the main suppliers got a real problem. So understanding what you've got is absolutely paramount to making sure that you can actually secure it, or better still, implementing that supply chain resilience that I think we're going to hear a lot more about moving forward. It's not a question of if you're going to get hacked, or if you're going to have a problem with, your own security or your supply chain. When? How do you make sure you can take the hits, keep on running, but then also make sure you've got some controls, additional mechanisms or suppliers to keep you going in the event of a bad time?
All right, so let's switch topics a little bit. Kind of, sort of, I want to stay on the identity side of things for this one too. I want to talk about AI. AI was something that we featured pretty broadly in the report this time around, particularly talking about how it's accelerating attacks and making inadept attackers better and the smart ones really smart. And so we are entering a world where identities aren't just humans anymore. Identities are now APIs, they're service accounts, they're even AI agents acting on our behalf. So if companies and organizations already struggle to track human access, how worried should CISOs be about securing these non-human identities, some of which can actually act autonomously?
Right. And we're definitely entering into a new phase. I think we've been dealing with user accounts, system accounts for a long, long time. System accounts, obviously, typically a fixed password, very infrequently changed, granting a lot of access in a lot of cases. And we're kind of getting a handle on that side of things to an extent. We're now amplifying that risk of lots of different agents, lots of different identities, all doing lots of different things, all at the same time in many cases. So I don't think it's about being worried as a CISO. I think it's about being focused. I think it's about really doubling down in terms of understanding, well, what do we have? What have we got? What monitoring do we have in this environment? How do we know that these agents are doing the right things and they haven't just inherited the missions and the privileges from their creators? We need to make sure that we know about them. We know that the agents are doing things in the way we expect them to do. But also, we don't want a calendar agent accessing a banking system necessarily. Kind of understanding that connectivity as well. We live in this sort of mesh world now where everything is connected to everything. How do we control that? I think the other side of things we need to really think about is it's about how we deal with doing APIs and agents and identity. Can't stick with the static API key or long-lived tokens anymore. We have to find a different way. In the same way that we don't just rely upon MFA, factual authentication for our users. How do we find another way for us to really verify and trust agents?
Sounds like there's a little work to be done in this arena then. Some exciting times ahead. I want to shift one last time to our last question, and this is about the browser. This also featured very prominently in the IR report. And this is not the first time that it has, but it seems to be increasing and increasing and increasing. Security leaders used to worry about servers and endpoints, and now it looks like the browser, the thing that you and I and employees use all day, is becoming one of the most consistent attack entry points. So I have to ask the sort of 101 question here. Why is something so ordinary turning into such a high value target for us?
Right. And I love this whole piece around browsers. I still remember, I'm old enough to remember the browser wars, and you kind of picked and choose, which one you were going to use, and IE versus Chrome, and all of these things came up. There was a lot of focus on the browser, and then it sort of died down. Figured out how to move forward with that. But look, you're right. We do see a lot of activity now hitting the internet, and cloud environments are our new sort of working world, and the root and the sort of the front door into those is the browser. And I guess because of that, that's why we're seeing a lot of attacks hitting the browser. You can secure the network side of things, but actually, if you've got a browser with a encrypted connection into some of these tools, you're going to see a lot. And so, one of the things that we're seeing more of is browser-based incidents. Or I think in the report that we've just put out, almost half of the incidents that we worked on has some form of browser-based activity that was part of the attack path. So we got to figure out how do we solve that? How do we figure it out? How do we how do we get visibility of the browser through the browser? And this is why a lot of organizations are starting to consider and shift towards enterprise browsers, give them the ability to look inside the traffic at that sort of layer, but also try and do some of the data loss prevention activities that are typically happening elsewhere in the environment. So enterprise browsers are really key in driving some of that. Equally, you've got to be looking through almost how do we make sure that they're being run in the right way? Can we isolate them? Can we apply the concepts of zero trust to really give us a view of what's happening? Make sure it's the key part really is how do we move beyond the trust but verify to never trust, always verify. And that's going to get us to a better place where we can actually start to understand what's going on a little bit more and start to secure that real route into the SaaS services.
One of the startling stats that jumped out at me, and I don't know if this did for you, was this notion that 87% of intrusions happen across multiple attack surfaces. And the thing that didn't actually surprise me as much as the fact that we actually have data showing that some threat actors use as many as like 8 to 10 different ways to get in. Did that surprise you?
I think the higher numbers is starting to, but it absolutely makes sense, right? If you're working for Bad Guys Inc., you want to make sure that when you get in somewhere, you're making sure you're there for the long haul. And sometimes it's not as easy as just going in through the front door. Sometimes you've got to make sure you've opened the window or opened the back door. You've got the loft hatch open. You're kind of figuring out that as well. So absolutely looking across all these multiple attack surfaces is super key. One of the things we find when we talk to our customers is they've got certain controls over some of them, but they're not necessarily tracking everything all at the same time. And it's definitely an area that needs to get.
Chris, this has been awesome. Thank you, man. I appreciate your time. And for those of you out there, again, please check out the 2026 IR report. You can find the URL on how to download it, either beneath this or above this, or maybe to the side, but it should be on this page. Chris, thank you again for joining us. We'll have you on again.
Thanks so much, Mitch. Yeah.